Malaysia News.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Go, and today we're going to talk about separation of Singapore from Malaysia. This is for Chapter 9, Part 2 of History Chapter for Secondary 2. So today we're going to talk about separation, and you can see the picture. There is someone crying. You'll find out later who is crying in the picture. So for this topic, there are actually 4 problems faced during the merger between Singapore and Malaysia. The first one has to link with 1963 Singapore election, the second one 1964 federal election, the third one has to do with 1964 race riot, and last but not least, you have the Malaysia Solidarity Convention. There are actually 5 reasons for the separation between Singapore and Malaysia. The first reason is that there is a disagreement over the common market. There is a different treatment of different races, and you have the campaign which is called Malaysian Malaysia, and you have different political ideology between the two political groups. And last but not least, you have the political rivalry between PAP and Alliance Party. Well, let's look at the background first. Singapore politics versus Malaysia politics. On one hand, you have multiracial. For meritocracy is what Singapore politics practice is a system based on rewarding based on a person's talent and ability. But for Malaysia, it's a bit different. It's communal politics, and they have the Bumi Putra policy. Basically, it means special privileges and privileges given to a certain group, while the nitis of land, in this case in Malaysia, there will be the Malays. So in this case, for the Malaysia politics, you have UMNO, which is United Malays National Organisation. They are specially catered for the Malays, which is also known as the Bumi Putra. And MCA, which is Malaysian Chinese Association for the Chinese, MIC, Malaysian Indian Congress for the Indians. And if together they form the Alliance Party, which is this logo. Okay, so Malaysia politics. Basically, Alliance Party, which is the main party in Malaysia, is back up this Singapore Alliance Party, which is like an offspring, basically a Malaysian political party which is based in Singapore. So let's take a look at the first event, 1963 Singapore election. In 1963 Singapore election, who was involved? Well, you have the Singapore Alliance Party backed up by the Alliance Party. And basically, you have the Singapore branches of UMNO, MCA, MIC. Basically, Singapore Alliance Party has its branch off into 3 categories. So the aim of Singapore Alliance Party basically is to win seats in the Singapore Legislative Assembly. So it happened in September 1963, and what happened is that they decided to challenge the winning party, which is PAP, in the Singapore election in 1963, and the result, they did not win any seats in the election, and not even in areas where there are more Malays. Okay, what is the consequences? UMNO become unhappy. It means that, well, their policies and they themselves are not very popular in Singapore. And the Alliance Party vowed to reorganize them to defeat PAP in the next election. Wow, that is strong determination. And such comments, they affected the relationship between UMNO and PAP in a negative manner, because that's not good sportsmanship, yes. So let's take a
There
look.
were also other political problems. In 1963, Malaysian politicians, including UMNO, came to Singapore to campaign. They tried to get their candidates elected, but they didn't win anything, not even in the 3 Malay constituencies. They were so unhappy, they started a hate campaign against the PAP. I even heard Syed Jaafar Alba saying he would teach Lee Kuan Yew a lesson with his fists.
So you can see, he's one of the leaders. He want to teach Lee Kuan Yew, which is the leader of PAP, a lesson using his fists. So that being said, the next year, after 1963, you have the 1964 federal election, which is in Malaya. Who was involved? You have the Alliance Party, which is the main party in Malaysia, and you have PAP. They wish to establish themselves as a Malaysian political party, meaning they are moving on from Singapore up to Malaysia. And when did it happen? It happened in April 1964, which is roughly around 6 to 7 months later. And what happened is that the PP participated in the 1964 federal election of Malaysia, because now they are technically part of Malaysia. So their political campaign attract a large crowds, and amazingly, they actually won 1 seat the Alliance Party, which is the dominant party at the time, they won 89 out of the 104 seats. So the consequence is this: even though they won, Alliance Party was very upset with PAP, even though PAP win, and they felt politically threatened. I mean, how could a small party actually went out and win one seat? Even though they win one seat, it still threatened them. Okay, so they wish to make people in Malaysia and Singapore dislike PAP, so that they can win both in Malaysia and in PAP the next election. So this is what they do.
The next year, the PAP took part in the federal elections. But even though only a few candidates took part, UMNO was furious. Their style of politics was so different from ours. Syed Jafar's speeches got even worse.
Kami orang-orang Melayu di Singapura. We Malays in Singapore have for a very long time been suppressed and oppressed. No force in this world can trample us down. Not one Lee Kuan Yew, 1,000 Lee Kuan Yew. We finished them all.
Wow, very strong words indeed. So you can see that people in UMNO, they are not really happy with Lee Kuan Yew for taking part. Okay, let's see. So what they did is they started an anti-PAP campaign. As you can see, basically they are very anti-PAP now. Using media and newspaper, they spread rumors to Malays to spoil PAP reputation, and this created more tensions and problems for PAP and the Alliance Party. So an example is this: there's a resettlement projects in Singapore. What happened is that Melayu, a Malay newspaper, claimed that 3,000 Malay residents were affected by the project. Basically what happened is that they're trying to shift the Malays to another area so they actually can rebuild the area. So this newspaper claims that 3,000 Malays residents were affected. But in reality, only 200 Malay families were affected. So there's a drastic difference. And they claim that PAP discriminate against Malay, that's why they're shifting up to another project, which in this case is not true, because what it's actually doing is just to rebuild, and you need to shift people, you can't build with them living in it. So the aim of the Alliance Party is to win votes and to win the supports of Malay in Singapore. And this caused two race riots to happen, okay, this racial tension in Singapore. So the third one, and the same year, because of the increased tension, this leads to a 1964 race riot. Remember the federal election in Malaysia? That's 1964. This is 1964 as well. So who was involved? The Singaporeans, Chinese and Malay. And there's a fight between UMNO and PAP. So when it happened, the election took place in April. After that, they started a series of newspaper and media campaigns. And it happened in July. And again in September 1964 in Singapore. So during the celebration of Prophet Muhammad's birthday in 1964, there was a clash between Chinese policemen and Malay participants. So it turns out into a full-blown race riots. And the Alliance Party anti-PAP campaign, it created tension and anger between the Chinese and Malays in Singapore. So this tension turned into violence during the celebration. So the consequence is this: 36 people were killed, 556 injured, and 3,000 are arrested. So you can see the consequences is very serious. Then look, the damages of property, we create also the fear and suspicion between the Chinese and Malays. And we are until the newspaper actually has to appeal for count. So the next event is the Malaysian Solidarity Convention. So after they actually stop the race riot, they actually go for a truce, stop the campaign. But what happened after that is this: in 6th of June 1965, which is around a year later, a political party formed by both PAP and other Malaysian political parties who oppose the Alliance Party. So basically they form a political party in Malaysia, and they campaign for this Malaysian Malaysia, where everyone will be treated equally and regardless of their race and religion. If you think it sounds something along the line of what PAP wants, you are exactly right. It's totally different from communal politics, where they especially treat a certain race or ethnic group. But in this case, everyone will be equal. For the Alliance Party, they felt very upset and betrayed. I mean, we call a truce, why are you doing this? And this is actually, they say that it's a response to what Alliance Party did. They spread rumors of PAP against the Malay community in Singapore. Well, it's a response. Since you did this, I have to retaliate. But the underlying reason is that Actually, after the riots, Alliance Party and PAP had an agreement. Their agreement is not to challenge each other politically. Basically, I don't go to your election to challenge you, and you don't come to here in Singapore to challenge the PAP. But what they did is the Alliance Party actually went back on their word. You said you're not to challenge me politically, but what you did is that they want to participate again in Singapore election in 1967. That's not right. We had a truce. So since you're doing this, I'm going to have a Malaysia convention. A Malaysia for Malaysians, regardless of their race and religion. So the consequence is this: they are seen as a challenge to Alliance Party, and they are seen as a threat to a special privilege enjoyed by the Malays in Malaysia. So if you are gonna win this, there are gonna be major changes. So I'm not gonna let you threaten me. So as you can see, the headlines of this say impossible to cooperate with Singapore, while Lee is the premier. But Lee refers to Lee Kuan Yew. So this caused a further strain in relation between PAP and UMNO. And if there's no cooperation going on, something has to happen. And if you can take a look, there are four problems faced during the merger, and this is the 1964 Singapore election. After followed by 1964 federal election, where PAP actually went out to Malaysia to compete, but they won one seat. In 1964, two race riots happened, and after which there's a Malaya Solidarity Convention where they actually create a new political party to challenge the power of UMNO. So there are five reasons for separation, and now we're going to focus on them. There's a disagreement over the common market. There's a difference in treatment of the races. There is a Malaysia campaign, which I've explained earlier just now. And there's a different political ideology. I think you're a good idea. And there's a political rivalry between PAP and Alliance Party. So by now, you should have been quite a clear idea that they are actually against each other politically. So something has to go. They can be categorized into economic. That's for the disagreement over common market. And for political, you have a different treatment of races, Malaysia campaign, different political ideology and political rivalry between PAP and Alliance. So you realize most of the reason is classified under political reasons. Okay, let's take a look. This agreement over economic matters. There's no common market. The central government of Malaysia, central government referring to Malaysia government, they delay the setting up of a common market because when they initially agree to merge, there is an agreement for a common market. So there is a delay in the setting up. Singapore was seen as an economic rebel. So instead of saying you being part of the country, you are seen as an enemy, a rival. We are trying to steal our business. So this lead to a decline in business in Singapore trade because they do not set up the common market. And if the initial plan is to set up and you didn't keep your promise, keep your words, there's going to be a disagreement. And this caused Singapore to be very, very unhappy with Malaya. That's for the economic reason. If you see, number two has something to do with political and the different treatment of the races. Malaya. Malays are given special privilege and rights. Perhaps they are privileged in terms of housing, university, entrance. All these are special privilege to help them improve their standard of living. But Singapore practice meritocracy basically means that everyone is equal, treated equally regardless of your race or religion. So you have to put in your hard work, you are better than the rest, then you'll be given special privilege based on your talent and your ability. And this difference towards the treatment of different races lead to tension and unhappiness because they couldn't agree. This is an ideological difference between Singapore and the central government of Malaysia. Third one, Malaysia campaign. Since there's a disagreement, well, Singapore basically has tried to actually win in terms of a political idea. So what they did is that they go for a campaign, promote this idea of Malaysia, where everyone is equal in Malaysia with Singapore inside as well. Singapore PAP decide to join a Malaysian opposition party, decide to form Malaysian Solidarity Convention. Basically, it's like all the opponents of UMNO and to go against them to join up, just like what Alliance Party had done. So, and Malaysia saw this move by PAP as a challenging the central government. And this created another tension between PAP and UMNO. And UMNO even called for the arrest of Lee Kuan Yew. As you can see, this thing gets serious. Number 4, difference in political ideology. Communalism versus multiracialism. Communalism, Malaya expects Singapore, since you have merged with us, you follow us. What it is that each political party will take care of their own race, for example. That's why they have 3 categories. Malay communal politics, where political parties are formed along different racial groups. That's why you have 3 different parties. Together they form Alliance Party. But Singapore doesn't work this way. We practice multiracialism, where your political group actually consists of different members from different race, different religion. In one party, you can find people from different race and religion. So that itself is really different in idea, different political ideology. The 5th reason, political rivalry between PAP and Alliance Party. This can be seen from the 1964 Singapore election, 1964 federal election, and Malaysian Solidarity Convention. Both of them compete against each other politically. In your country, in my country, they're constantly fighting. And this actually lead to the race riots. So you can see this political and economic difference lead to disagreement and increased tension between the Alliance Party and PAP. If this carry on, basically one party will have to go. In the end, the Prime Minister at the time, his name is Tunku Abdul Rahman, he realized that the many disagreement could not be settled. We merged, but we still could not settle this. Something has to go. And then he felt that it was best for Singapore to leave Malaysia. And PAP finally agreed to this decision. Let's take a look at the televised broadcast of this event.
For some time, there have been differences between the central government and the leaders of the Singapore state government. And these differences take so many forms and are of so many kinds that it has not been possible to resolve them. And so we decided that we must part company.
Well, they certainly have to part. So the story between Malaysia and Singapore came to an end. And this is what happened on the Singapore side.
You see, the whole of my adult life, I had believed in Malaysian merger and the unity of these 2 territories. You know, as a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kinship, would you mind if we stop for a while?
And the reason he stopped is because, well, tears were actually flowing out from his eyes. So you can see that he actually believed in the merger, but in the end, it did not went as well as he thought. So, Merdeka, Singapore independence, in the 9th of August 1965. Singapore become independent, separated from Malaysia. Before that, we need to take a look at what is the definition of a nation and republic. A nation consists of organized population and a government. A republic consists of a nation governed by representatives elected by the people, where the head of state is not a king or queen, or whether we call monarchy, but a president instead. Okay, these are definitions you need to take note. Okay, Singapore decided to join the United Nations, and that's the logo in 16th of September 1965, since we are a nation by ourselves now. So, in 8th of August 1967, around 2 years later, they joined ASEAN, together with the rest of the other countries at the time in Southeast Asia. They are formed Association of Southeast Asian Nations to keep the peace among neighboring countries. So these are a few nations where it first formed. Then the members, you have Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. And basically, these countries form ASEAN. Singapore actually has progressed quite a lot if you learn about the history of Singapore from a fishing village all the way to a modern city now. And there's a picture of the Esplanade together with the Marina Bay Sands. So 1945, Singapore was still a British colony after Japanese occupation, and 1948, first election, SPP won. 1955, Labour Front won, and 1959, we have a full internal government. After which, PAP won, but what happened is that Ong Eng Guan, which is a communist, won the Hong Lim by-election in 1961. And this caused a worry because Tengku Abdul Rahman was actually worried that Singapore would become communist. So he suggested a possible merger in his speech. So Barisan Socialists, which is a communist faction which break off from PAP, they started a campaign to oppose the merger because they're scared they'll be wiped out. Well, race riots started to happen in 1964, the Muslims and the police. But then, basically what happened is that they already merged, so Barisan Socialists, they have been wiped out.
Malaysia News.